Hello and welcome to the Swim Brief. The boys are back. We got the gang back together. Feels like a long time.
Yeah, it does. Good to see you guys again.
Joel is finally back from his research project. So congratulations on the quinoa discoveries, Joel.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the pod while you've been gone, right? So you know what we've been telling people about why you haven't been here. You listen to it when you're not on it, right?
What I do is I get everything kind of filtered through to me, and so it's more like people that I know that listen to it will call in and say, "Hey, are you listening to this?" I'm like, "No, why?" And then like, these assholes said this. These jerks said this. Go back and edit that. We don't want to be on the censored part. So yeah, they always just tell me all the rude things that you guys talk about. So yeah, we'll be fine. It'll be all right.
Eric, were we rude?
Just mean.
I mean,
mean.
If telling the truth and being honest is rude, then yes, we were.
Yeah, that's when it comes to my life. Then anything truthful is definitely going to be rude about me, and I'd really appreciate you guys would start to lie and sanitize things a little bit more, please.
Well,
so thank you.
That second voice you heard there, that was the voice of fervent literacy proponent Eric Weiken. Yes. Eric, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Finally back in my own apartment after being gone for 2.5 weeks, and it's starting to look like a domicile again.
Okay.
Boxes of suits have disappeared, and
that's
samples have been put away. So yeah, I can actually walk through my living room. It's great.
Congrats on that.
Do you have enough hotel soaps to last you for at least another year until you get back to this point again?
Given my haircut, I probably got enough for about a decade.
Yeah, good on you.
I mean, hey, look, man, at this stage, we're just lucky that they brought the hotel soaps back. I had a number of pandemic hotel stays where there was no soaps. So, here we are.
The Motel 6 in Poughkeepsie just isn't living up to the standard that we expect.
2022. Well, yeah. After all those jokes, we are starting on a somber note. Bill Boomer. I was standing on the pool deck, I think, when Eric texted me. Was that be Tuesday evening to let me know that he had passed away? And I'm just to kick things off for whatever I'm about to say. I'm not somebody who had any personal experience with Bill Boomer. I've never met Bill Boomer. I never sat in a talk that Bill Boomer was giving. I think I stood within 30 feet of him once at Olympic trials in 2012. That was already, I believe, when he was doing stuff with the University of Tennessee. Joel, I gather you've had a little bit more interaction, but of course we've referenced Milton Elms on this podcast, and you can't talk about Milton Elms without talking about Bill Boomer. So in many ways, he's sort of like the godfather of a lot of stuff we talk about in that vein. We're not going to attempt to do a comprehensive obituary. I guess we'll just have to wait for somebody to do that. Maybe we'll do one down the line when we gather a few more facts and don't just sort of hastily slap together an article for an absolute legend just so we can get it up quick enough. As far as I know, Bill Boomer's still dead today, so we've got plenty of time to memorialize him. But I think, given that people all over the country are in the sport of swimming are sort of thinking about him at this moment, we could at least have a little bit of a conversation about, what's running through our mind personally. And I'll just kick it off by saying that the first thing I thought of reading about Boomer and thinking about his legacy is I'm not so sure that there's the same pathway to getting a Bill Boomer in the sport of swimming that there used to be. reading about him essentially as somebody who didn't have a background in swimming, but got asked to coach swimming and, throwing himself into it, but not necessarily throwing himself into it the way that most swim coaches sort of get their coaching knowledge. And as a result, we ended up with all sorts of amazing perspectives and ideas that he fostered over a long period of time, and worked with other people to develop and test and sort of just continue to iterate on something over a period of almost 60 years. Joel, I know you had sort of a similar sentiment about Boomer.
Yeah, the thing I'm really upset about is that a couple of years ago I had a chance to go out to his place and stay there, and I just couldn't do it. It was like just the flight out and get to the place, it was kind of hard, and had like my son was pretty young at the time, so I didn't go, and now it's like one of those things where it just hits you that you never get that chance again. So I'm again, it's one of those things where you just mad at yourself for opportunities lost like that, or the times you used to like when I first got out to Phillips 66 back in the mid 90s, and he was out there, and when the first time meeting him, it's like you just like every time you talk to the guy, it would be like one of those where like you just wish you would have had more questions and been more educated to ask more things, because the guy was just really, really such a bright dude. What I really enjoyed working with him, because this is, I think, the legacy kind of things behind is how he would, so many times you hear about when people like talk about stroke, they talk about the person doing the stroke. Like this is Jenny Thompson's fly, this is Michael Phelps's fly, this is what Caleb Dressel's fly looks like. And he was one of the first guys that kind of would break it down. Well, this is what butterfly is. These are the physics behind it. And these are the things that you need to do. And just kind of flipped everything on the end, rather than from, kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it just his way of looking at the holistic approach of like what water is doing, how the environment's changing, how the athlete is changing, how the chemistry internally is changing, and how you have to be ahead of that. I mean, for the guy, he will sit down and look at a lawnmower and start breaking that down. The guy would like he would sit in his place all the time watching, he loved watching rodeo, which is like, you're like, what? And like, he loves watching, like, again, just how when the animal is moving, all he was seeing was like, how is the center of mass shifting in that animal? What muscles are firing? What's going on internally? And then he would see that in the same thing with athletes. Like, how are these things moving? So it's funny, like watching him on the pool deck and hanging out with the guy, like, because he, like, as people would swim, he would start moving his chest a little bit, or he'd start to like move his arm. And the thing that's always off-putting was all of a sudden when he just like turn his back to the pool and look between his legs upside down at the swim, like, what are you doing, dude? And he was just like, if I can't figure something out, what I do is I'll just take a completely different perspective, because then I can at least see the rhythm of what's going on. And so again, rather than looking at what is the athlete kind of doing, he's like, what is this? What are the the requirements of each stroke, and then breaking it down like that. And so it was the amazing thing. Again, this is like the mid 90s, and he was doing this stuff way before that. I remember reading about him in Swimming Technique magazine from the 80s. And this is stuff that people are still kind of struggling with, and not even kind of scratching the surface of the stuff that he did. And so the way he influenced swimming is so pervasive that I don't even think he'll really ever get it attributed to him, because he wasn't one of those guys going out there seeking,
Right.
Hey, look
We're
at
all
me.
doing
and
so
like
much stuff that's influenced by him, and we don't even know it.
Yeah.
Even if you've tried to know it,
Right.
you've got stuff that you're doing that you don't know came from Bill Boomer.
And it always, again, the like reading on blogs and things like posture, line, balance has become one of those things where people just spit it out. And it's one of those things where obviously that goes back to him, but it's become such a common thing of people saying it, but that people don't even really understand it still. And it would be one of those things where he'd like kind of like smacking his head, like you're missing kind of what posture is, line is, balance is. It's that three things together. These are three really, really interesting components. And like, being with him when we do, he would do these circuits of talks and things like that. And I'd just kind of sit in the back and basically be the caddy carrying bags for these guys and stuff like that. Where again, he'd throw out these words and people would be like, what the hell? What do you
Right.
say? You know, this is the, what in part, it was all of it was purposeful, because again, he came from a background of not swimming. And so all the information that he had to kind of uncover for himself. And so he used language that was pretty unique, because he wanted to kind of break through what everyone already kind of thought they knew in their head. Because I think as coaches, our weakness is we always go to our default setting. This worked for me, or this didn't work for me. And so then all of a sudden you got 18 brush fires going on, a kid's losing his goggles, a parent screaming from the stand, you got bills to pay, you got all the other stuff. Like, I just got to put something together. And your default setting is almost always what worked for me, or what didn't work for me, or what's going to work for this Olympian. I'm going to go with that. And I thought he was really good at going to his default setting was, I don't know, so I'm going to figure this out. I do know about physics. I do know about what the needs are of this particular situation, and let's design it from there. And so I think that was the thing, is he was always trying to get people out of like the rut of how they were thinking, and trying to redesign everything. And then sometimes in those clinics, people are like, oh, this is like arts and crafts. When are we going to talk about training?
Right.
And that's, oh boy, that would trigger him. And he was a guy, like, again, you see him all the time. He's like the most melodic. When the flip, when that switch clicked, it was not fun to be around Bill. He is a big, intimidating dude. Really gentle soul, but again, when that flip guy, I was like, that was it. But anyhow, the main thing was kind of the understanding that if you don't have these fundamentals, you can't go to step 2. And people are always like, well, I want to know how you're training these Olympians.
Yeah, give me step 6. And he's like,
I
you haven't
want that
understood
one.
step
Just
1
give
yet.
me that. I paid $50 to get in here. Give me step 6. That's what I want. The customer is right. And he's just like, you can't get to 6. You got to be at 1.
Yeah.
And all these coaches and stuff, and this is what I hated too, is like the idea, like, I'm going to work with elite level athletes, and so that's all I need to know. And when Bill would come out and work, it'd be like, hey, Bill, you want to, I'm age group coach, you want to work with the age group kids? Yeah. And he would be just as excited about working with an age group coach as back in the day he was working with Catherine Fox or Jay Thompson or all these others, that he was like just as excited and just as thrilled when they could figure out how to do a breaststroke kick, or how they're holding water, or just them talking about their day. And that was the cool thing, is, again, the guy just liked people. He liked movement. And I thought how he broke swimming down was pretty cool and really so innovative, because again, he didn't have a background in it. And like you said, I don't think we'll get to that point again, is like, I don't think you can either, because again, everyone's like, the professionalism of the sport is almost going to strangle the sport, because we become so inbred of, well, you go back to like, again, well, Doc Councilman did this, and so we're all kind of shooting off of this. And then this guy did this, so we're all shooting off of that. And a guy like Bill Boomer came in, he's like, I don't know who these people really are. And he learned on his own. But the knowledge that he got on his own, he had to acquire, and so he appreciated more. There's like the depth of knowledge that you get on the internet. It's like, it's so easy. You didn't earn it, and so you don't value it. Everything that he did, is pre-internet. He had to go to the library. He had to pick things out. He worked in a university. So you go down the hall and like, I don't know about exercise physiology. So he'd just sit in and like, tell me everything. And he'd sit in on classes, and he'd sit in and he'd just talk and ask people. And so to have like an ego strong enough that you don't mind people telling you're crazy, but an ego that's low enough also to go like, I don't know this, tell me more. And I think that's another thing that I think a lot of us coaches don't have. And I think, so I guess the takeaway on that, however, rambling, whatever, because
I have
really
2
sat down to
takeaways
think
for
about it.
whenever you give your takeaway. So
My takeaway again is just again is having that the strength to be able to go, what, maybe everyone is wrong, maybe I'm right. And but also going, I'm willing to listen, and no matter how crazy an idea or what it is, I need foundational information on this before I start making conclusions. And then just taking what are the components that this stroke needs, and what does this individual need, like both like on a physical level, on an emotional level, and things like that. And I think that's where he was really pretty far ahead. And I think, again, I can't say it enough, I think the professionalism in a sense also strangles us as much as it helps us.
Yeah. You mentioned something in the middle there, and I want to let Eric chime in as well, but I think it's really important to highlight, as I said, probably everything everything boomer derived that I have learned has been secondhand through Uncle Milt. And I remember saying to him, we'd probably been talking for a couple of years, and that's how long it took me to get the courage to say, like, I don't really understand most of what you're saying. I don't understand. Like I've been listening, and I'm trying to understand it, but I don't. And I remember him explaining to me some of what you were talking about there, which is, he said, I purposely use language that is unfamiliar to people. That's on purpose.
Right.
And the reason for that being that if I use a word that you already know, you've already got a definition in your mind, and we can't erase it. You can't. If I try to introduce, well, this word that you already know, here's what it really means, my new definition will sit alongside of it, but it won't replace the old definition. So you'll always have these two sort of competing concepts. Whereas if I use some language that you've never used, then I get a chance to define what that means. Then you have a chance to build like a new, and I was like, that was like one of those, head exploding moments for me, but I hear that in as well. And I think the other thing that you mentioned, you talk about sort of step 1, step 2, step 3. I have to imagine, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that he would probably not be happy to be known as a technique guru.
Especially guru. Yeah, they weren't
guru or
fans.
technique. I guess guru's worse, but the idea that the whole concept of people like act like you enjoy the smell of your own farts when you start talking about this, so I'm going to do it anyway. But the whole concept of like, I've come to adopt, I don't like the word swimming technique, because it is like sort of step 6 out of 1, where you're trying to zero in on a very little piece, like mechanical piece of something, rather than and skip ahead of understanding the concept behind it. Yeah, but what do I do with my like pinky finger, right? What's the technique? What do I do? Well, there's a whole broad movement that's going on, and maybe in the end your pinky finger does something weird, but like,
right,
there's
you're looking at the symptoms, not the cure. And I remember the one time when I remember when Billy really got hot at one of those clinics was the idea of, so like, I'm not really buying into this, like your idea of the technique. I'm not really buying into that. Bill's like, physics? You're not buying into physics? Then we can't help you here. You shouldn't be here. We'll refund your money. And it was just that. You're like, we can't go anywhere else if you don't believe in physics, and so that, yeah, I think that was, like you said, again, a lot of it is like, people, what are you looking at? Are you looking at a symptom, or are you looking at the actual cause of what's going on?
All right, Eric, I'm going to let you in. You've been sitting in the corner like that extra.
Sorry.
Who is actually going to get one line in the movie, and he's just waiting to deliver it. So please, I know you have some very specific things that are sort of boomer influence that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I mean, my exposure to all of this was, the Chronicles way back when, and
which can you get those? Can anyone watch those? You can't buy them anymore, right, Joel? They're just gone.
Joel's got a VHS copy.
I actually do
sealed.
somewhere. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I got, they weren't really watchable when they were available. They're not exactly entertainment chock full. They're a little dry.
Yeah. They are. But it was just kind of the beginning of it all, and then beyond that was spending a bit of time on deck with Joel back at UW Milwaukee, where kind of got my mind moving in a different direction when we were watching people in the water, and I was talking about limbs, and Joel was like, what about the middle of the body? Like, what about water and things like that? So that really kind of got my mind going in a different direction, and spending 4 weeks right after grad school, I ended up working the Auburn Tiger camp, the last camp that Richard Quick did. So before that 4 weeks even started, the way that he ran it was really great, is that we had at least 2 practices. It might have been over 2 days, might have been 3 water sessions total, where we all got in and we worked on all of the components that we were going to be trying to help the kids move through over the next 4 weeks. So being really early in my coaching career, before I even got a full-time coaching job, going through some of those movements and trying to have a better understanding of it, certainly helped. And it influenced my coaching over the next several years. The drawings, trying to draw like that was at times next to impossible, but just being able to illustrate specific things to kids really opened up their eyes to how they move. And then just taking a lot of those concepts and those thoughts, and the way you did it was like, and watching, technique videos or watching coaches talk about specific items, and just being like, there's so much confusion. Like, I can't even think about some of the things that you're trying to do individually and then get in the water and try it myself. I'm like, we have to simplify this. We're talking about 8 and unders.
Right.
You can't take this backwards and try to teach an 8 and under how to do some of these things using the words that you're doing, and just trying to, like you said, not having a huge background specifically. And I kind of took it to, when interacting with kids and finding out what else they do and associate movements and patterns that they have in other sports of their life, and how do we connect that more so on the blocks and walls and things like that. But just, that was my starting point of thinking about how to do things differently. And a lot of times I catch grief for it, or have some
Never from us though.
Have some theory that Chris just craps on because I say something that might be hopefully optimistic or something like that, and be silly. But the reality is why not think about it like that? Because if you don't, then you can't necessarily say it's wrong if you don't actually have thought. So that's kind of where it all went. And my one time of being around Milt was at an age group meet here in Texas pre-COVID. Just happened to walk into a meet, and he was there visiting Dirk, and they were just up in the stands watching kids and talking crap about some of the things that they hear coaches say. But in any event, I mean, it's a huge thing. And when you guys talk about how we're not going to see something like that again, and like the focus is, club excellence, which isn't a bad thing, or getting people on podiums and national teams, which again isn't a bad thing. But a lot of it is, like you said, skipping to step 6 and forgetting about step 1. And why aren't we teaching our age group coaches who deal specifically with 10 and unders how to deal with step 1? Well, the problem is the people who are in charge of training those coaches never took the time to understand step 1. So
that's one of the things.
I think we're in a really bad spot for some of this, and I don't know. It's not going to come from the top. USA Swimming's not going to take what was there, because nobody knows there how to teach this stuff like that and get people to open their minds. That's what I worry about. Closed-mindedness.
That's the thing that's interesting with that. I remember that was a clinic shift. Was first, people were interested in the Olympic level, and so you get all these top coaches coming into those clinics, and it was, again, all they were doing was like, okay, I like that piece of that puzzle, I'm going to fit it into my puzzle, and that's kind of what we do. Is like, I'll just take that and I'll just put it into this, and that's one of those things again where people started jumping at, like, oh, he wants a little pinky down first and freestyle. What kind of crazy, again, like, they would glom onto this one thing again that was like, if you're watching someone swim by, maybe it looked like it, but it wasn't the lead thing. That wasn't the reason why something was happening. It might be something like, we'll correct that later. The main thing is what's going on is we've got, the body kind of moving in a direction. We've got them breathing correctly. We got this going. That's like extraneous stuff. And people are like, oh, that one part there, I can't, it's like, let it go. Everything's moving in the right direction. That's an easy fix. The hard fix is what's going on right now. And people get home like, this isn't going to work. We need to get rid of that. And they couldn't get past like small concepts again, like on the exterior versus what's really going on the interior. And it was one of those, again, where you get those certain clinics where people are like, well, what does this guy know? Who does he ever coach? He was at University of Rochester. I'm coaching this person. You don't know. It's one of those frustrating things, again, within our own sport, where our only resume material is what a kid that we've coached has done. And if that person has not been at this level, then I'm not going to listen to anything they have to say. And it's immediately thrown out. And then we also start to, it's like a stamped, it's like milk expiring. You've got Michael Phelps did butterfly 4 years ago. This is way behind us now.
Right.
Like, what have you done for me lately? Again, it's like that technique is old. So therefore it's no good anymore. And so many of these people are throwing it away. So I know the clinics switched over to age group conferences a lot more. And again, one of the reasons why I think that you're right in that we're not going to see it again is there's no money to be made there. Again, no one really cares about the age group stuff. What was always the bright shining hope of that was you go to the age group conferences, 80s, even earlier than that, in the room, how many people in this age group conference want to keep going coaching age group the rest of their life? None of them. Everyone would do age group as the stepping stone to coach the senior team on to the next level, on the next level. And more and more started going like, this is what I want to do. I want to coach age group kids. I want to coach 12 and unders. This is where I feel really good about coaching. And that was always a really cool thing to see. And that's when what Bill would always say was a lot of the elements of Red Cross swimming. You call it the shadows of Red Cross swimming are still stuck in a lot of these kids, because you take a kid, you throw them in the water in a sense, and now you're building a stroke around a drowning response,
Right.
or you throw them in the water. It's like everything they're doing is about like, how do I get air? I got to get air. And so you're kind of letting the kids figure out how to get air on their own. And then we're going to figure out how to make them Olympian. And so it's always like, the statue on a clay footing. So there's only so far that kid can get, because the baseline of emotional needs, of how they're breathing, of how they're responding to the water, their entire interaction with the water. And that's immediately people will start to tune out and be like, oh, this hippie stuff, I don't need
Right.
this. But that's, and again, that's kind of what everything is. Again, you built around all of this stuff. And so again, where the glimmer of hope is with, you see so many things about the mental aspect of swimming, and not just mental as in sports psychology, enhancing performance, but the mental side of it, like emotional needs, are starting to kind of be addressed. But again, the money's kind of in the, hey, what did this Olympian do? Not
Right.
what did that 10 and under do? Because again, that 10 well, I've got 18 10 and unders faster than that. So obviously you don't know what you're talking about. And it's laying that foundation, and Bill would always call it the library, laying a library down so that they can always reference back. I can do this. And that was the idea, again, breaking so many of these components out of swimming, of the physics of it, of like how you're moving through the water, so that you get into a situation in the middle of a race that you have somewhere else that you're like, okay, I can kind of do this. And that's at a subconscious level, so that it's happening quick in a race. Not like I've got to stop and think and pause, like, what am I going to do here? And again, I think that's really the unique thing, because when he first started doing these talks, like I said, that they weren't going anywhere. People would get fixated on his phraseology or whatever little thing, and they wouldn't listen to him. And he just would send out letters. So this is, before email and things like that. I was like, anyone want to listen to anything? I think I know something about breaststroke that's really good. Eddie Reese is one of the first guys like, yeah, I'll listen to you. Come on in. And
Not
that kind of opened the
surprising when
door.
you think about it, right?
But exactly. And we've talked about this again. The great part about Eddie Reese is like, the strength to be like, this is what we need to do, and the belief in what you're doing, but also having that openness to go, you know what, I don't know everything. I can learn something. And not only can I learn something from someone that's like, like you've coached 18 Olympians, someone that no one's ever heard of out in New York. And I think that's really the cool thing. And that's the thing that, like when Bill would come in, and like you mentioned, the Boomer Chronicles, a lot of the kids in that Boomer Chronicles were from my group that I was coaching. I'd be like, geez, Bill, you want to coach these kids? And he would like, just, the praise, he'd be like, he's like, Joel, this is the best thing ever. He's like, you don't know how many coaches don't want to turn a group over to another coach or feel like, you know what, I already know enough and I've got to show stuff. I'm like, I don't know anything. It's like, you're welcome to coach any group I have at any time ever in my entire life, man. But he was like, it was really nice. And it made me think about that all the way through my career. Is like, you know, it doesn't really matter what a person has done as far as their career or things like that. What is important is, do they have an interesting idea? I get a lot of like clips, especially YouTube clips or swim clips from former swimmers. Like, what do you think about this? Like, it's kind of derivative of everything else that's been done before. I'm really not interested. Like, it might look novel, but a lot of the stuff is like, it's really not novel. And then when you see something that's really novel, like, this is interesting. This is pretty cool. And so what Bill was doing was everything was like, this is really novel. And so it's, I think a lot of times our initial reaction is, you're outside the group. Obviously you don't know what you're talking about. And I think to be able to really move forward, you need people like a Bill Boomer who's going to ask questions. Well, why are we doing it like that? Like, what do you mean, why are we doing it like that? We've always done it like that. Mark Spitz did that. Look where he got. Again, why did he do that? And then it always kind of, again, like I said before, it goes all the way back to, we've become so inbred that, well, this is what Doc Councilman filmed, and therefore this is what we built it on. It's kind of I think it's like a nautical term like dead reckoning, where you're completely lost and you just start mapping a place out based on where you think you're at. And I think 99% of swimming is based on dead reckoning. You know, we were lost to start with. Someone's like, hey, I think we might be here. Great. And so we've just built all of our, you know, everything we do, all of our training, our physical aspects, technique, everything is based off of, oh, well, we thought we were there. And so therefore, and so because we keep on referencing back to that point, we make more and more articles. It's like, you know, creating your own, like this, creating your own podcast, referencing your own podcast. You're like, well, I've heard it 2 or 3 different times. Your own podcast, dude. Of course you heard it 2 times. You said it twice before, but we've done that. So using kind of an absurd example like that.
How dare you, Joel?
Using an example like that, that's where swimming's at, where we just keep on building on all the things that we think we know. And what we need are a lot of people sometimes going, well, do we really know that? And the problem is, obviously it's infuriating. It's like, what do you mean? And so I've got to go back and explain the basics. Like, yeah, go back and explain the basics.
Yeah. And defend them and make them make sense and actually think about what you're saying. And, you know, you did give me a shred of hope, Eric, because you were remembering Dirk down there. And I had some familiarity with that Bridge Bats program. I think I visited them like 8 times or something. And what you can see some, like, I guess now that I'm thinking about it, you can see some Boomer legacy alive there, in that a Dirk would consistently, on purpose, he would hire coaches for his team that had never swam or coached swimming ever in their lives. And that was a purposeful strategy. He said that his overarching philosophy was, are these people good at working with kids? If somebody's good at, like, you either like working with kids and are good at it, or you're not. And so if you are, then you can figure out everything else, and probably make me better in the process, because I'm going to have to do that process that you just explained, Joel. Like, I'm going to have to start trying to teach you what it means to coach swimming. And in the process of doing so, if something really doesn't pass muster at all, you're going to question it. And I'm going to have to think about why we're doing it. And so I guess I have a little bit of hope that process is alive in some places. And I probably just don't know about all the places where it is still going. But in terms of the path of, you know, somebody taking over, even I can't imagine somebody being hired as a head coach, even of a Division III program, with no experience in the sport of swimming. I just don't think it would happen again.
I think that's the cool thing. That's the part I really kind of, I kind of miss. And this is where I get the crotch the old man kind of thing. Was especially in Division III or in high school, it'd be like, you get hired on staff, you're on staff, you're teaching history, you're going to be track and field, women's gymnastics. There you go. It's like, I don't know anything about women's gymnastics.
Yeah.
Time to learn. And so obviously you get some people are like, well, I'm just going to be a crap coach at this. But you get people, again, that certain generation, and that's unfortunately a lot of them are passing away now. is they're just so prideful and intelligent enough to like, well, I owe it to these kids to be the best I can at this. I'm going to learn everything I can about this. And so kind of going in like, I don't know everything, tell me. And so you ask the students, you learn from background, you ask questions, you go to clinics, you go to conferences, you make yourself the best you can go, rather than going, well, I don't know anything about it and I just got to sign this. So it is what it is. And I think, again, like I said earlier, like I think information, I used to always kind of make fun of the kids on swim teams, like at a university, like you've got the world on your phone. You can figure out anything you want, but you don't. So it's like willful ignorance. But part of that also is like the information is so easy to come by that you haven't earned it and you don't value it and it doesn't really stick. And so people, again, like a Boomer or a lot of these other coaches that we don't know because, again, they're Division III or high school or whatever that just had to figure things out their own, were really innovative and really did a lot. And so I think that the thing that's pretty cool is Bill coached long enough that a lot of his former swimmers are out there coaching too. And so a lot of that's still out there. And sometimes you go to meets and you see some people moving differently. And the cool thing I think with Bill was he had a big enough ego. It wasn't like he was devoid of ego. He is devoid of ego when he's willing to ask questions and try to learn everything. He had a big enough ego also to see, like he'd watch some swims, he'd be like, yeah, that's because of the work I did with this person, and he sees, especially in underwater and in breakouts, like that was me, so that's got to be an amazing feeling. It's one thing like, man, I obviously have no idea what it'd be like to coach an Olympian, much less a gold medalist Olympian, but be able to go, everyone right now breaking out like that's because of what I did. And so I think he knew that, and I think that's the tough part about coaching is we never really see impact that we've made in kids' lives or things like that, much less in a sport. He was able to at least see the impact he made in a sport, which is pretty cool.
Amazing. Eric, anything else to add?
No, I think you guys have said it all.
I guess we had two little items. I'm very happy that we got to do that much. We're just going to tack on two extraneous pieces to this podcast. So if you've listened for your Boomer fix, you've gotten it up to this point. The first one would be Jeff Julian is moving to Mission Viejo in Southern California to lead some sort of elite group. Eric, since you've had another long break here while Joel and I wax poetic, what do you think? What do you think of that?
He's had a long tenure at Rose Bowl, been the head coach since mid 2000s.
Yeah, almost 20 years.
Yeah. The club has had a lot of success. He's done a lot of things. I think, I don't know him really, really well. We've had a couple of passing interactions here at Junior Nationals most recently, but seeing his time with ISL, and maybe it seems to me like that maybe just that was kind of the light that went on me, like this is where I want to go next. Like I'm really enjoying the ISL part of it, working with professionals, working at this time and at this point in his life. He's battled the worst personally and he's come out on the other side. He's like, this is something that I want to try to do, and let's see if it works and let's go with it. He's got enough confidence in his ability to coach that he's taking this leap and leaving Rose Bowl and going to Mission to start this elite team. I feel like maybe that there's, Mission is trying to recover from years of whatever has been going on. So, it's a new project for him, but at the same time, the team is trying to make strides and do things differently. One of their co-head coaches, I believe, is from the dive side, and they have an extensive diving program on top of having the swim program. So it only makes sense that you try to find, a great mind and somebody who's well respected and get them on the top side, somebody who's going to be your most visible person for your program, and then kind of build around that so you can get some more of those young coaches or age-minded coaches that you want and need to create the program you need and desire. So In any event, I'm looking forward to see what he can do. I'd love to see this become an opportunity for pros to have another place to train. And if it works out, all the more power to him. It's exciting to see.
Yeah.
Just as long as it doesn't turn into one of those centers of excellence that we tried all those years ago. That really didn't work.
Well, I mean, it's one good thing they have going for them is Mark Schubert's not involved. So probably less risk of that. I think anytime you can replace the literal Prince of Darkness with just a solid human being, that's a massive upgrade for your program. So I think this is a wonderful move for Mission Viejo on a more, I guess, and I don't want to say realistic because I don't think what I said was unrealistic. I guess a more relatable note to everybody else. I do think that this was a bit reactive in terms of Schubert leaving and, starting whatever elite group at, a place down the road. Now, I also understand that in Southern California, the 4 or 5 miles between these two places could be a 30-minute drive for many people. So maybe it's not as much of a sort of threat to how well Mission Viejo has done. But I think, they certainly felt, I guess, from this move that they had to do something to keep it as an attractive location for really high level swimmers to train and compete. And certainly in that respect, this is an excellent move to do something like that. And I'll be really curious to see how it pans out. What about you, Joel?
I was kind of interested more in just kind of like the structure of these things, because you always want to kind of follow the money. It's like, because I really like the idea. You got cryotherapy, you got nutrition, you got sports psychology, you got training, you got all these things centered in one spot. And then you got to think, well, why? It's where's the money going to come from on all this stuff? Why would you have, I don't know, like a bunch of, you take any sport, we always think, because swimming for us is so important. Well, of course you'd have that for swimming. It's like, well, then just replace it with some other sport. Okay, men's badminton. You're gonna bring men's badminton into cryotherapy and all this stuff. Like, well, why? Where's the money going to come from? And then you think maybe all these revenue streams is pretty interesting with image and likeness kind of things in the YouTube videos and all these different ways that athletes can make money and possibly teams could make money. I'm really interested to see how something like this becomes sustainable if it does, because I think it's such a crazy time in college athletics, especially in what we call Olympic sports. The ones that don't get TV airtime. Where are they going to get the money from? How are they going to sustain that? Who's going to pay for a lot of this? Is it going to get bankrolled by swimming alums in a sense? Because we heard about like Katie Ledecky going to some guy's backyard pool. Like, yeah, that's some guy. It's a multi-billionaire with a huge training facility. Yeah. But that's what the sport kind of needs. We've talked about how the ISL was crumbling at one point, and you go back to the founder who was like, well, I thought everyone swam, they'd have an interest in it. Well, we didn't. But again, the thing is, we should, especially as coaches. Like I said, it's like, I don't own a Condor shirt or anything like that. I don't know anyone that owns a Condor. So we're not giving money back, and we're not priming the pump of our own sport. So if we want something like that to succeed, then we at the grassroots level need to support it. You need alumni that are going to put together a cryotherapy room for Mission Viejo for this to kind of get going and figure out if it's feasible or not. And so that's what I'm really interested to see is like, again, where's the money going to get to sustain this? Yeah, you got maybe 1-2 years, sure. But how's it going to keep going? You have a pro group, who's going to be paying that coach? Because again, you're taking a lot of age group 8 and unders to pay for that pinnacle, which is kind of the USA swimming model,
Right.
But again, maybe we make it more of a pillar where a lot of the money at the top is starting to be able to self-generate. Again,
Right.
I don't know how that would be. And that's why I'm really interested to see things like this go. I'm sure a lot of other places, because again, you've got all these things around there. Most importantly, I read like the professional internships. Now you're talking. Now you've got a chance at like getting someone who's a pro athlete where your peak career is going to be in obscurity and you're going to end at 24, 26. Where are you going to go from there? If you can get them real jobs, now we're talking. or maybe you do get a Michael Phelps where they're going to be able to continue to make money off of the sport. But again, that's
Right.
so completely rare and unheard of that we can't build a model based on, well, we'll get everyone to be Michael Phelps. Well, let's get a bunch of people that are, going to meet lawyers and doctors and attorneys and things like that, or whatever industry you want to go into, and get them internships and have a true post-grad kind of a thing where we're leading them to something else. But again, how is that going to get sustained? It'll be interesting because you got location. Obviously, you're going to be in a pretty nice part of California. Why wouldn't people want to go there? So
Yep.
again, you've got to obviously access to the athletes. You got access to facilities. Now, how are you going to be able to sustain it? This is the part I want to see.
Yeah. All right, let's switch bases finally to talk about Adam Peaty and his announcement of Project Immortal. And I think we're going to need all of your unbridled optimism here, Eric, because when we previewed
Thank
this
God.
topic before we started, Joel and I were peak cynicism. So we need you. I don't know if you've got it in you, Eric, but you gotta find that deep well inside of you that believes that, like Mel Stewart, that Adam Peaty is capable of a 54 breaststroke in long
That was a
course.
relay start.
That's a callback. That's a callback. That's
Yes.
that's what they call that in the biz.
In the biz. Nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. I guess so. The stated goal of Project Immortal is to put the 100 breaststroke world record so far ahead of its time, that it can't be broken for a long time, or that's at least how I understand it. I feel like this is, I'll just lead off. I feel like this is pure hype. This is pure marketing hype. I'm not mad about it. I think we could use some nice marketing hype, but as I sit in my bed and record this podcast, take that, Adam Peaty, take that, my podcasting from my bed comments on your swimming. I just think probably within a year, Arno Kaminga will be a better breaststroker than Adam Peaty, and he's already peaked career-wise, and I just don't see it happening, whatever he's announced. But it's a nice idea for something, and I would love to be proven wrong, but I just don't see it happening. I guess I'll go to Eric, and then Joel can join me in crapping all over Adam Peaty's dreams. What do you got, Eric?
I mean, the optimism that I do have is that I believe he has the ability to go faster, whether or not it's the immortal time that he expects and hopes. I maybe am a little less optimistic. It's just a matter of where he is with his state of mind and what he needs to do next to get there. This is something that we had kind of talked about before the whole thing started, is he might be one of those athletes where he may have lifted himself out of his ability to swim as fast as he was.
You think he's too big?
I think he focused too much in the weight room to do the necessary things he needed to in the pool to do this immortal thing already. COVID aside, yeah, I believe nothing wrong with being strong. I mean, you need to be, but it became such a thing.
I feel like this is just your jealousy of my endomorph body type coming through, Eric.
Basically.
You're projecting it onto Adam Peaty.
I am. You are Adam Peaty in this conversation. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I'm just like you in terms of being a fan and wanting to see it. I think if he can sort some of that stuff out and train himself to the age that he is, sometimes you see, so as an athlete progresses in their career, some of them, it's two different tracks. Either they keep doing what they've always been doing, Ryan Lochte, or they evolve and they move and they grow and they do something differently and they're able to do better. Granted, different event focus, but Anthony Irvin was able to step away from it, do things differently, come back, reassess, take his life and work it in a way that helps him achieve that success again. And I'm hoping it's more along the lines of that than it is just grinding himself into the ground because doing more is better. So doing more is better, and working harder in the weight room is better. So working harder than you should be working in the weight room is better. And, you know, but
I actually,
I
so
think
you,
it's a little cheesy of a name, though, to be quite honest. This whole Project Immortal thing was just the kind of an eye roll. And then again, Joel's comments about who's going to bankroll this? Who's going to take this? Is he going to have like a YouTube series? Are we going to get a little bit of a day in the life of Project Immortal? I mean, where are we going with this? Are there going to be T-shirts? Can I get a hat? Like, can he sponsor our podcast? Like,
well, I don't think after listening to this, he will be. When even Eric is saying that your name is too cheesy, I think you're in trouble. I
think this is one of those. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Joel.
Sorry. You saw Jaws, right? Did you ever see Jaws 2? Yeah, the movie.
I think I've seen Jaws 2. I don't remember a single scene from Jaws 2.
I think this is kind of the same thing going on where you got Jaws is like, man, this is a great movie. This really works. And then someone's like, hey, we can make some money off this. What was it in Jaws? It's a big shark. Okay. Well, let's get a lot more big sharks. Let's get a bigger shark. And so again, you just take whatever you think worked and you amplify it.
Right.
And then it never comes out well. And I think the same thing here with Petey was like, I think what was working, now all of a sudden you start getting all these people, it's your strength. It's this. You get a lot of people telling you what it is, and you start amplifying that to the point where all of a sudden, maybe that wasn't what was doing it. You know, maybe there's something else. And so I always kind of think about when I was growing up, lived out in the middle of nothing, and you see like guys out there baling hay. You know, they didn't look like, you, Eric, where they're just, physical specimens. You know, it was just dudes that looked like Eric Weichen, but they're throwing these really heavy bales of hay all day long. And there's that kind of different kind of strength involved there. And I think it involves like a lot more of the fascia system and connecting the body and moving things.
Here we go with fascia again. Oh my God.
And you look at like a Manny Pacquiao, that dude is pretty strong, but when you see him, like that's an elite athlete, you kind of, again, there's different levels of strength that I think we're just kind of scratching the surface of, that I think we've gotten away from. And I think that the more you start to get away from that and just start to kind of like segment out the body and try to like amplify these things, I think you just get Jaws 2 out of the deal versus what really worked for you. Yeah. And so I think he'll go, I think he can go faster. Sure. I don't think it's going to be to the level that he's going to set it out of reach forever though. I think, it's not going to be Austin's big drop. It might be, a little bit, but again, it's the thing that's always, I thought was cool about breaststroke was, again, there's just so much drag in it that you can, reduce a little bit of the wave drag here or there and get some pretty good results. And a lot of different body types can get in there and do different things, as long as, again, kind of going back to the Boomer idea that if you have the principles of the stroke and you adjust the principles to your body type, I think that's when you get your best performance out of it. And if you can integrate that again with your nervous system, obviously he's got an elite level nervous system. That's great. But I think when all of a sudden you go, oh, it's the strength, and you just morph that out, I think all of a sudden other things affect that balance, affect your ability to move the water, affect your ability to feel the water. And so again, more power to him, making money, all for it. But again, I don't think this is going to work well.
I think Eric actually keyed in on a path here that I completely doubt Petey would go down, but is sort of the only path I see as a realistic way to achieve what he's trying to achieve. And I'll just to back it up to sort of give an explanation of one thing that we talk about here in the back office of Wahoo's is we have sort of like a 10-year theory. We didn't come up with it, but we talk a lot about 10-year theories. So like, if you're going to go run marathons, I think effectively you've probably got 10 good years, really good competitive. You could do it for longer than that, but your years of doing it optimally you have a window. Um, we talk about drinking alcohol, where you basically have a 10-year window where you can be good at it. And then after that, everything is downhill. And I argued that breaststroke is actually probably more like a 5-year window. I just look historically. There have been almost none. I would say Kitajima is your only example of a breaststroker with longevity longer than 8 years, unless here's the one caveat: you do like an Anthony Irvin type move and you take some extended time off. And that's what I don't see him doing. Is he going to take a year off from competing in breaststroke, which is literally his whole source of income, right? Is how good he is at swimming breaststroke. Because I think he could do that and come back on the other end of it, swimming breaststroke faster, but I just don't see it happening. And I think, again, look around. I would be shocked, for instance, if Lydia Jacobi was still swimming by the 2028 Olympics. And we're talking about somebody who's only 17, who won an Olympic gold medal, and she would only be like, she'd be in her prime, theoretically, in mid-20s. But I think breaststroke windows are very short. And I think part of it is because of all the strokes, it tends to be so different. And when people get into it as a specialist, they tend to really, really heavily specialize, and there's a payoff to that specialization, but eventually it turns on you. And once it turns on you, the only way to get back to a good rhythm is to actually fully step away for some time. And I just don't see it happening.
Kind of like getting the yips in golf or something like that, where all of a sudden it's possibly a series of bad races, or you're losing.
Yeah, it just kind of devolves on you, and everything that worked for you doesn't work for you anymore, or you're not able to do what worked for you anymore.
An overuse of the stroke.
Yeah.
Instead of like an overuse injury, it's kind of like an overuse injury of the stroke itself. I mean, we could see we have a case, possibly an N of 1 with Ruta. I mean, if she decides to come back, she's doing it on her own terms. She's clearly not swimming,
and she's had the time off.
Yeah, she's following the path that you just spoke to. And I mean, Adam has that book that he wrote about being an immortal or something along those lines of whatever. Well,
I think he had the big advantage of he took some time off.
He
was basically out of the sport, and then was able to launch, basically a window of just like improve, and then it stopped. And I think he's in the other side of that right now. And the longer that he continues to just keep, as you say, keep piling on and trying to do more of what he's already doing, I don't think it'll be successful.
Yeah. So book tours, and then just do this circuit of clinics that he might be doing, just trying to teach kids how to swim like Adam Peaty, and taking care of his family and do that for.
I think he should.
As athletes age, and that's the thing, we used to always look at those curves, like this is when you have your peak power, this is when you have you look at the NBA again, when people are at their peak. I think that what keeps a lot of people in their sport is, again, their ability to either evolve with the sport or evolve as their body changes. And so you see a lot of, really good basketball players, I'm shooting threes, and again, their game changes. And so the same thing with swimming in a sport, in an event like breaststroke, where so much of it's about balance, it's about timing, so I feel like that is, as your balance in the water, being able to shift and change with that, as your flexibility decreases, because that's just, again, he's doing all the right things, but at a certain point, again, we hit a point with flexibility. It's like be able to change the things. People always reference like a Tom Brady. It's like, well, look how great, how great your boy is still playing football. It's like, well, the rules also changed in the middle for him, though. Where all of a sudden you can't touch the quarterback, you can't touch wide receivers going over the middle. So his game didn't have to be, I'm going to throw it down the field. He can hit crossing routes all the time because his receiver's not going to get decapitated. He'll be okay. Plus, it's okay. It's Edelman. I'll get another one. We'll decapitate those guys. I'm still fine. So his game wasn't predicated on his ability to change so much as just not decrease so much. And then he just evolved his game. The same thing with any sport is you've got to redefine yourself over and over and over and over again in a sport like swimming. Again, as if this declines, something else is, there's got to be another elevator going up as one elevator is going down, because the physical prowess is going to go down. And so his ability to time out the walls, hit his breakouts, strike the line on the strokes repeatedly, has to be more and more on. So that elevator has to keep going up. And again, when you're doing that, again, it's not like both elevators going up at the same time. You're just not going to slow down as much as everyone else in the world. And so again, him hitting those really great breaks, it's just not going to happen. Again, he can slow the descent. He can get faster in it a little bit here and there, maybe, because again, you don't know where that elevator is as far as physical prowess. But again, in this case, physical prowess might be taking other things down with it, like a balance, like something else. And so that's the cool thing I think about swimming like that. Again, is it's all about just the time. If you're going to gain time somewhere, you got to lose it somewhere else. And
Right.
so and when he's got such a the walls are really so good. I mean, his ability to keep the hips up on the water is so good. His ability to strike into the line is so good. Where else are you going to get that extra boost as you age? As again, father time is always wins.
Yeah. I mean, what was the last time? I wanted somebody to answer. What was the last time he showed up to a meet and raced a non-breaststroke race?
Probably when he was a teenager.
I don't know. Maybe he has swum a 50 fly randomly at something. But
I'd have to check the
we're-
ISL results for the last 2 years.
no way,
not
no
this
way
year.
he's shipping in on a random ISL thing. I don't think that. But anyway, all right, great conversation, guys. Thank you so much, and thank you for bearing with all the scheduling trouble that we've had recently. Thank you to everybody for listening. We'll probably be back next week, but you never know with us. As long as Joel doesn't go to do research again, we'll be all right. And thanks, and we'll see you next week.